Hello and welcome to episode 169 of Retro Encounter.
69, dude!
RPG Fans Weekly Podcast. I'm Mike Sollosi, and joining me is the Ted to my Bill, I guess, Robert Steinman.
No way!
I fell out of the armor, dude! Alright, Rob, making your triumphant return to this podcast. I guess you're only allowed to be on episodes about Dragon Quest or Diablo. I'm not sure how that worked out exactly.
Well, you haven't had a Yakuza podcast yet, so when you start going down the magic of Kiryu Kazuma, then apparently I need to show up like Majima and talk about it.
Never say never, and I will keep that in mind for when I'm planning out the next few months. But joining Rob and I is another Rob Rogan.
Hey, how you guys doing?
All right, it's been a minute since I saw you on the podcast, Rob. I think it was the last one was the FF7 episode over the summer.
Yeah, it's been a while.
All right, always too long. And joining Rob and I is Alana. Your name isn't Rob.
It isn't. Hey, everyone.
And making his Retro Encounter debut, relatively recent review hire to RPG Fan, Zach Wilkerson.
Hi there, everyone.
Okay, now we are going to belie that retro adjective in this podcast name and talk about a game that came out in the United States mere months ago, Dragon Quest XI. Basically, from the moment I finished it in October, I immediately wanted to podcast about it. And so I asked around the RPG Fan staff and was able to find 4 other willing partners to jab about it on a podcast. Let's go through how each of us experienced Dragon Quest XI, just around when you played it and what your early thoughts on it were. Rob, I'm going to go with you first, Rob Rogan, that is, because you wrote the RPG Fan official review for Dragon Quest XI. You gave it a very nice score, and also probably got to play it a little bit earlier than the rest of us since you used a code. What was your overall feeling about it?
Yeah, I got it maybe mid-August. I put a lot of hours into it in a very small time frame. But I basically immediately fell in love with it. It really didn't take long for me to latch on to, the world, the characters, just everything about it just blew me away essentially immediately. So I hopefully conveyed my love of the game through my review. And it would have actually probably gotten a little bit higher if it wasn't for that music, But
we will have plenty of time to clown on Dragon Quest XI's audio. But before that, let's move to a different Rob. Rob Steinman, what were your early thoughts on Dragon Quest XI?
So I picked it up on Steam, so this was actually a cool moment where it's the first Dragon Quest game on PC in the West, first mainline Dragon Quest game on PC.
A few of the really old ones were on like MSX computers in the 80s,
yeah.
but that doesn't really count for our purposes.
Yeah, and it played very, very well on Steam. I was getting, really good 60 frames per second. Looks absolutely gorgeous. I was spending most of my time playing it on my Steam Link in my living room. And I think just about every hour I had free, I was trying to fire this game up and just play for a little bit because I was just absolutely enthralled with it. It's the big Dragon Quest, like Super Dragon Quest VIII, I think is how Derek described it at one point. It's the big giant Dragon Quest VIII that I wanted back in 2005 when I played Dragon Quest VIII. It just took them, almost 13 years to get it into my hands. That seems appropriate.
Zach, how did you approach Dragon Quest XI from the start?
It was a game that I knew I was going to love before I bought it, and so I very impatiently waited at my GameStop for them to sell it to me like at exactly 9 o'clock the day that it came out. And then I might not have slept the rest of the evening while I was playing it. Definitely didn't sleep.
Aren't you a teacher?
Yeah.
Didn't this come out during the school year?
Yep. I managed to knock it all out in about 2 weeks. Needless to say, I loved it.
I guess this podcast is 40% educators this time, so I'm no judgment, of course.
Well, thank you.
Alana, your turn. Around when did you get to Dragon Quest XI, and what were your overall impressions?
Much later than everybody else. Well, about a month. So I didn't actually get around to it until October. But again, kind of like Zach, I just pretty much plowed through it. I was really needing Dragon Quest. I don't know about everybody else here, but I've only played 2 other Dragon Quest games, and Dragon Quest XI felt like 8, exactly like as Rob said, Derek's little quote for Super Dragon Quest VIII, and that was exactly the impression I got. So I was like, no, I need this because I wanted to replay 8 anyway. This nailed it. Like, I couldn't put it down for at least 3 weeks, I want to say. I platinumed it as well, under 100 hours, just about. So I was pretty enthralled with it for the whole time, and maybe a bit of a wobble midway through, but yeah, absolutely loved it.
Cool, and well, this is going to be a very positive podcast episode for the most part, I guess, because I also played this and loved it. I played it slightly late because I had a commitment to finish Suikoden 2 for the podcast, and and that was right when Dragon Quest XI came out, so I didn't start it until about 2 weeks after I bought it, but upon starting it, it was all I wanted to do besides eat and sleep, and sometimes maybe forgo one of those 4 more Dragon Quest XI. And I finished it in probably about 3 weeks. It took me just over 100 hours, like 104 or something. And I also got the Platinum Trophy.
Yeah, I think I finished up at about 80 hours, but I played it over the span of like a month and a half. Just my school schedule was so bad. But I found it very digestible in that way. Like you always hear on lots of other podcasts like Ape 4 Play, they talk about how in Japan, Dragon Quest is like the game that you play for an hour or two before you go to bed. And that's kind of how I sort of played it, was just like an hour or two here and there, like, oh, I've got a free morning, I'll play for a little bit. I never really had a marathon moment with it. It just was like an hour or two every night, and I really enjoyed it. It was very digestible in that way.
Yeah, this Dragon Quest might be even more so like that than any in the past because there's more save points.
Yes.
And things like side quests and individual tasks are not in an ugly way, but sort of segmented a little bit. Like, it's very easy to say to accomplish a goal like, I'm going to get to the next save point, or I'm going to craft this item, or I'm going to do this side quest, and then have that be your 90 minutes of gameplay for the day. There's a lot to do in this game, and it's all sensibly organized in a way that feels a little bit less cluttered than, say, an Assassin's Creed game, with better quest organization than, say, a different open world interpretation of a popular, colorful game. I'm talking about Breath of the Wild here.
I think the other fact, and I know you have an entire setup here, but it doesn't really fit in, so I'm just going to throw it out there. The signposting in this game is so good in that they tell you, who's the person in town that you need to talk to keep the story going. When we talked about Dragon Quest VII, that game, even the 3DS remake, was really rough in that area. Like, oh, you need to talk to this dog on the second floor of the house in order to get the cutscene to open up the dungeon to keep moving forward in the game. And if you don't talk to him, you're never going to move forward.
I think the worst Dragon Quest game like that is 6.
6.
I got lost in certain towns in 6 trying to figure out where to go next, and I wish that had more modern signposting.
Yeah,
but
7's very good. 11 is very good with its signposting and making sure that you're always keeping that story going forward, which is just awesome. And how the hell are we 10 minutes into the show and we haven't talked about Sylvando yet?
Okay, we will get to Sylvando, but
I should have. I was supposed to say hello, darlings, as soon as the podcast started. I missed it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a failure.
Me too. It's fine.
But one other thing about the signposting: whenever you fire up your save, it gives you the story thus far little bit of narration in maybe 3 or 4 dialogue windows, which is very helpful if you don't remember exactly what you were doing last, or if you are picking up the game for the first time in a long time. It's very, very player friendly in a way that I don't think felt handholdy. They let you do what you want for the most part.
I would agree. Also, first game to have those updates, those recaps since Metal Gear Solid for me. The original Metal Gear Solid did that, and they were very well written, and these were also very well written.
Right on. And also, I guess one more thing. One complaint I've heard about Dragon Quest XI is that it's too easy, but they mitigate that with the draconian options at the very beginning of the game. You can make this game very hard on yourself if you choose all of the like the challenge checkboxes right at the beginning.
There's no way somebody can beat that the game with all those on. Like you're always level 1. You can't equip items. Like what?
I'm sure there's some jerk on Reddit that claims he's done that and that everyone else is a coward for not doing it. But whatever, man. None of those are
Cool.
None of those are attached to trophies, so forget him. I'll have this nice cuddly adventure where I can get all the items.
I'm not playing the Dark Souls of Dragon Quest. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do that.
Nope.
The areas are open and navigable enough that it might be the Dark Souls of Dragon Quest.
A little bit. You keep going. It's God. I want to gush about this game so much. Pick a topic. Let's do it.
I think the most important thing of a long RPG is characters, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with the same core group of characters, and if they're unlikable or annoying, then it makes everything worse. I love the cast in this game.
I think the only one that maybe got on my nerves a little bit was Veronica. That's the only one. I don't like that tropey, shrill,
But her dance animation is so cute.
No, it's really good. It's really good. And there's payoff with her story, like a complete gut punch later in the game. And I think we better put a marker here that we are going to spoil the hell out of this game. So
yeah, well, let's. Oh yes, we are going to spoil everything about Dragon Quest XI. If you are concerned about Dragon Quest XI spoilers, do not continue any further. I think let's avoid talking about the big mid-game turn and the 8th character until later, but the first 7 that appear on the loading screen even, I think are just, they're awesome. And one other aside, Dragon Quest XI is very deliberately a reference and a subversion to Dragon Quest III. Dragon Quest III is sort of famously it's sort of like the Dragon Quest. It was the first one that where they implemented that rule of only releasing the game on weekends. It was sort of considered the gold standard of Dragon Quest for a long time. It always shows up near the top of popularity polls. And each character in the game, plus one NPC, represents one of the Dragon Quest III classes. Mm-hmm. Dirk the Merchant, who's Eric's buddy from early on, is the only one that isn't playable. But the other 8 playable characters are each a Dragon Quest III class. And I think it's kind of adorable.
Yeah. I think that you have Eric, who is your kind of thief character. And we all kind of commented on his voice acting was maybe the most questionable in the game. Not really the voice actor's fault, but the decision to have a primarily British cast, and then this guy who's talking like he's from Brooklyn. And it felt a little off. But I think the actor was trying to do as great of a job as he could. I think the rest of the voice acting in the game varied from good to great, but he was kind of the only one that grated on my nerves a little bit.
Yeah, they do the thing that modern Dragon Quest has done from 8 onward, where every town represents everyone speaks English, but is accented from another language, and I think they wanted the slums of Heliodor to be American style, but it didn't really work with a British actor trying to do that American affect.
I agree. I felt like he was the most awkward. Anytime there was a remotely sort of cringeworthy delivery, to me it was probably usually Eric, but not awful by any means,
No, it wasn't a deal breaker, but it was just maybe one weakness in an otherwise really, really excellent voice direction, and I think only the international versions of the game have voice acting. It's a bunch of silent people in the Japanese version.
Yeah, and the Switch version is going to get Japanese voice acting, and it was real fun seeing on Steam message board forums. I couldn't tell if people were trolling or not, but they were like, unless they include the Japanese dialogue, I'm not playing it. And I'm like, guys, doesn't actually exist. Just throwing it out there. But yeah, the Switch version is going to get voice acting.
I ran into that in a forum decades ago, where someone asking if there was a version of Devil May Cry 3 with the Japanese voice language track, but no Devil May Cry game ever had a Japanese voice language track. They only recorded English and
Dante.
Yeah. But so it's not as valued in Dragon Quest in Japan as it is in English, because there was no Japanese voice acting in Dragon Quest VIII either, I think, until the 3DS version.
Probably.
Yes, right.
I mean, they're super gatekeepery about Dragon Quest over there, aren't they? It has to be this, and it has to have this music, and it has to have this style of dialogue and things, and it's just
even the menus.
Anything, yeah, even the menus, yeah, which they changed for the international release as well. They have to fit into this mold of what is Dragon Quest, and they have literally. I feel like there's a checklist that they're like, yeah, it's got this, it's got this, it's got this, it's all done, it's perfect, and it's like. They made that nicer for us, and yeah, I always appreciate that because.
I think the Dragon Quest creators wanted to do that, because Yuji Horii was because Dragon Quest XI came out in the summer of 2017 in Japan. He was excited about bringing it to an international audience, and was even on like the stream announcement that it was coming to the West. And I don't think he has a problem with making changes to. He just wants that larger audience to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, like even running, I think, was exclusive to our version as well.
Right. The faster movement on a horse was true in the Japanese version, but the auto dash was an addition for the international version.
And that's one of those additions that if that was not in the version that we played, it might have been a little rough because some of the maps are really big, and you are just doing a lot of walking, which is cool for scale and it's cool for cinematic quality. But I think one of the things that I noticed when I played Dragon Quest VIII on 3DS was how much speeding up the battle animations made that game so snappy and so much more playable. Instead of spending 70 hours with that game, I beat it in like 30 or 35, which was awesome.
Dragon Quest XI, I think, does make very deliberate actions to speed up a series that is sometimes accused of being too slow. Like you can avoid random encounters easily. Or I should say, there's no random encounters, and it's easy to avoid enemies in the field if you want to. You can even run them straight over with your horse if you want to, if you don't want to deal with them that way either. But it also makes it more challenging to avoid enemies in dungeons, which is probably, a conscious design decision. But you can also skip animations for the pet powers, which are the longest animated attacks for anyone. So it's a lot of nice small changes in Dragon Quest XI, some of which are in both versions, some of which were added to the international version. That I appreciated basically all of them. Like when I could see. When I would play something and sort of think about it, like, oh yeah, this was a conscious design decision for player ease or comfort. I liked it every time. I want all Dragon Quest games to play like 11 now. It'll be weird replaying 4, 5, 6, 7 and having to deal with random encounters and wonky animations and no Sylvando.
Nope.
Yeah, I can't do that.
And the game saves when you turn it off. I know how dumb that sounds, but like not having to go to a church and like say I would like to quit my game, do that whole rigmarole. And that's a carryover from the handheld games where you could put it into suspend mode, nice and easy, and then pick it up where you wanted to. Just the saving in the game felt really good. It was always auto saving. There was no risk of losing anything. I think my only real issue with the accessibility features that they put into it, when you eventually get the magic key and you can open up the red doors or the locked doors later in the game, if you look at the map when you're in the area, you can see the doors. But if you try to like scroll around, which is not a very good menu, like going in between the different maps and areas, if you try to go to different maps and areas, those doors will not show up. That was like the only thing that really annoyed me was like, I have to visit the area to see if there's any doors. I can't just look at the map from the map screen and see them. And it's a minor issue, but that was just a little frustrating. Like,
Hey, I'll deal with that if it means I get campfires to save and forage at.
Yeah, with a great armor mini game, which ended up being a lot of fun and like rage-inducing in moments when you just go too far and you get. It's the gambling aspect of Dragon Quest that always comes in. Like, are you tough enough for these fights? Are you tough enough for this boss? Are you good enough with your crafting to be able to make this ultimate weapon? And there's a lot of different avenues, whereas old Dragon Quest games, you kind of just had to spend money to get the better equipment, and that's how you beat the game. I don't think I bought like hardly anything over the course of the entire game. I just made everything. I just crafted the whole way through.
I didn't buy anything unless, let's say, outside the first 10 hours. Unless it was the only way I could get something, like in the one town that's like fake Venice. Dragon Quest XI is divided into basically 3 acts. In each act, there's a special piece of armor you can get by haggling between 2 merchants. So it's the cat suit at the beginning, and Hendrick's armor in the middle, and a really good piece of armor for Jade at the end. Other than that, I don't think I did hardly any armor buying, just some ingredient buying over the course of the game. Because sometimes just the easiest way to get a magic beast hide is to go to the one campfire where you can buy magic beast hide.
Yep. Yep. And then I
Yeah.
think the crafting materials become more readily available later in the game thanks to a shop, and also they're just dropped more often, and you can get around the world a lot easier in typical Dragon Quest fashion. You get the zoom spell. So like all that stuff actually becomes easier and easier as the game goes on.
Yeah, I didn't realize that that you could summon your flying item from the menu until very late in the game. So I would I would zoom to the area where you meet the flying thing, and then use that altar for at least a few hours before I realized I could just do it from the menu.
I'm so glad you said that, because so did I. I went to the news landing every time and was like, call Cetacea, and then it was only when I went into the key items menu I was like, oh, the flute, I wonder if I can use it here. Oh.
Yeah,
right.
that happened to me. It was at least a few hours. I don't know how long exactly.
I didn't know it until just now, so
Yeah,
you guys
same.
go for
Yep. I didn't know either. I kept going back to that damn altar.
Yep, every time.
As long as you're not in a cave, as long as you're in a town or in the overworld, I think you can use the item in any of those places.
Are you okay?
Oh, well, I'll live.
So let's go back to the beginning a little bit. Dragon Quest XI starts a lot like Dragon Quest III. You wake up and you explore your hometown a little bit, and in Dragon Quest XI you're doing a coming of age ceremony with your boring friend, who I wish wasn't the only marriage option in the game. Okay, that was a little bit pointed.
She's
Sorry.
cute. She's cute.
She's pretty
She's
cute. She's
fine.
loyal. She has a dog.
Yes,
Yeah,
Who would you have rather married besides Sylvando? Let's be
Jade.
honest here.
Jade.
Yeah.
Jade and keep the
Jade.
dog.
No, Sylvando. Sylvando. Sorry. I'm too gay for him. Sorry.
Well, okay. So, regardless, you go through the coming of age ceremony. Your mother tells you that you're actually special. She's not your real mother. You were adopted, and you come to understand that you are the Luminary, a special chosen one destined to defeat the demons that have been occasionally plaguing the land. So you go to the big kingdom of Heliodor to talk to the king. Again, just like Dragon Quest III, you go to the big kingdom to talk to the king at the very beginning. But instead of Dragon Quest III, where the king sends you on a quest, this king decides, the Luminary only appears when the demons appear, so how do we know the Luminary isn't with the demons? And you get thrown into a dungeon. Not exactly the same as the beginning of Dragon Quest III. For the rest of the game, you meet the thief Eric, and you escape from the dungeon, and you become a hunted hero with the Knights of Heliodor, led by Jasper and Hendrik, as antagonists throughout the game. And as you're sort of running from the Knights and trying to figure out how to more about the demons, you meet a group of 6 people who believe in the Luminary and want to help him, starting with Eric and eventually going through Veronica, Serena, Sylvando, Reb, and Jade, each of whom is kind of like one of the classes in Dragon Quest III. So, I mean, we talked about Sylvando a little bit already. Besides Sylvando, who's your favorite character, do you think?
Well, I'm annoyed that Rab's real name prevented me from
That's
using
right.
my name
Oh,
Dragon Quest XI, which was one of the most hilarious moments this game I've been waiting years for, and I put in Robert because that's always my hero's name in Dragon Quest, and the game's like, nope. And I think they did eventually patch that because Rab's real name is Lord Robert.
Yep, he's the former King Robert, in fact.
Yep. Well, great Roberts think alike, and we got like 47 of them on the website now. So that was a little frustrating. In terms of, Sylvando's obviously the best character. I think mechanically I have to go with Super Serena. Because by the end of Act 2, Serena is a damn god. Like, she just annihilates everything. I think I could...
With the double skill tree and crazy stats and, like, almost every offensive and defensive spell in the game, holy crap, Super Serena's OP.
Yeah, she's basically a Super Saiyan at that point, which is really good. I also like Rab and just the going back and forth between his character, kind of being the typical Master Roshi is lecherous old man, but also kind of being the Paragon, voice of truth, Yoda-like character for the group as well.
Yeah, he's wise and smart and a bit of a paternal figure, but who also loves bunny girls and keeps dirty magazines in his robes.
Yeah,
he's a true Scotsman.
Yeah, and Dundrasil, the kingdom he's from, is the Scottish accent town, and his son-in-law has a real sexy Scottish accent. I enjoyed that very much.
Oh yeah, I do like your father. Yeah.
Okay, because in case I wasn't clear before, the Luminary is secretly the Prince of Dundrasil, who escaped Dundrasil when it was overrun by demons, which would make Rab his grandfather, and his parents both deceased. But what were their names?
Erwin and Eleanor, or
Eleanor's right.
That sounds right. I guess Erwin is. I'm wondering if that's too similar to Erdwin, who was the name of the hero from 1,000 years ago.
I love the translation and the localization in this game, but there are way too many ers for this game's own good.
Too many IRs and ERs, yeah.
Like, it gets really confused, especially toward the end of the game when they start making connections to other Dragon Quest games, and you're like, wait, Erdhood now? Like, it's...
And there's also Eric and Hendrik, which is weird, because Hendrik's real name, Hendrik's Japanese name was Greg. So it's like maybe they thought Greg wasn't cool enough, but Hendrik sounds too similar to Erdwin and Eric.
It's also more confusing because Hendrik gets the outfit from Dragon Quest III for a while, and then the hero gets the real outfit from Dragon Quest III, and so it's like, wait, what? It's basically Hendrik was cosplaying as the
all right. Well,
Dragon Quest III hero.
Hendrik joins the team later, and he's the hero of a town of refugees. So he has an outfit similar to the Dragon Quest III hero's outfit. But later in the game, Hendrik's ultimate armor looks like the giant, like the sort of red magenta armor of a Dragon Quest III warrior, because he sort of represents that class, and the hero's main armor is a much shinier version of the Dragon Quest III color combination. They're really smart with the DQ3 references in this game.
I took Hendrik's armor to be more like what's his face from Dragon Quest IV, the Scottish knight that you control.
Yeah,
which I guess is...
Ragnar McRyan, who also
Dragon Quest III.
Yeah, he's also a Dragon Quest III warrior.
Yeah, but it's just all those callbacks are great because they're wonderful for fans, but they kind of follow the Marvel rule where they don't take away. If you don't get the reference, you're not completely lost. You know, they're not doing something that you feel like you have to go and visit a wiki to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But while we're talking about Hendrik, I think my favorite character other than Sylvando, because we will get to Sylvando, don't you worry, is either Hendrik or Jade, because I sort of like how no nonsense both of them are.
They should have gotten together.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But Hendrik is a very serious knight stereotype but in a way that is sort of cool and loyal, and him, his world crumbling a little bit at the end of Act 1, and then him rededicating himself to the right cause made me like him a lot. And Jade, like, she's sort of the sex appeal character, but wasn't obnoxious about it for the most time. I just mostly loved how ass kicking she was. She's just awesome in combat. Maybe by the end of the game, Eric and Hendrik are a little bit better for single target damage, but I thought Jade was just so fun to use. All four of her skill trees were great.
Yeah, and besides the stuff with Act 2 with her, which I thought was a little problematic, she was my favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did transform her into a vampire bunny girl, but then she sort of turns it on its head and uses those evil powers for good for the rest of the game. So I don't know how I feel about that.
I was going to say, I think my issue with that bit is that every other character got a story arc based on their backstory. She had a little bit in the Luminaries chapter with where her the Luminaries' parents were killed and the castle was destroyed, and she had to run away with the Luminary's mother. But yeah, her chapter is like her being a sexy evil bunny, and I was just like, oh, come on, like, really? Like, I mean, I absolutely adore and would die for Jade every day, but like, yeah, I was just really disappointed with that. But she's super fun to use in battle, and like, she killed so many metal slimes for me, and I love her. So
I use her a lot in battle. I thought she was super effective in battle as a character during combat. But I don't know. I found out of the cast, I found Jade to be the most bland. Honestly, I mean, like Alana was saying, she didn't have the best personal arc. But I just kind of found her kind of bland when taken as a whole. But I actually really liked, outside of Sylvando, I actually really liked Rab as well, and he had probably the most poignant, kind of emotional moments throughout the game, right?
Yeah,
most of
him reminiscing about his daughter and his fallen kingdom. They were heavy.
Yeah.
They were very, very heavy. Yeah, and probably the most emotional outside of a few, larger scenes throughout the whole game, I think.
I think a lot of Jade's characterization comes in the conversations at the campfire and the party talk, which I keep forgetting to do in Dragon Quest games, and I know how stupid I am. Like, especially in Dragon Quest VI, you get almost no characterization for anybody unless you do party talk. But I would agree, Jade is kind of the no-nonsense characters in cutscenes. A lot of her personality and her playfulness starts to come out in those party talk options. The weird thing for me to kind of echo Alana's point from a second ago, she never plays up the sexiness, and then to turn her into sexy vampire bunny was weird.
Yeah.
Like Jessica exudes some sex in Dragon Quest VIII. Like she knows it. I basically married Jessica. I've made my peace with that.
Same.
I married a weird combination of Jessica and Pinkie Pie, and I'm going along with that, and I'm riding this train all the way just to see where the adventure takes me. But like Jade doesn't have any like overt sexuality, and yet she has an entire skill tree devoted to it. So it was a little weird in that sense, like, and it was also weird to have like Serena have the dancer outfit, but she I don't think Serena understands what sex is.
I think the only reason the dancer outfit goes to Serena and not Jade is because Serena joined so much earlier, and they wanted the dancer outfit to have like 30 defense instead of 100.
Right, but it's that weird stuff in Dragon Quest of like, you're talking about a series that is derived from Akira Toriyama, and in what is it, the first 2 episodes of Dragon Ball, we have Bulma flashing herself to Master Roshi. Like that's I'm not giving it a pass for that, but it's a weird holdover, especially when this game nails emotionally resonant moments, like actually bringing a tear to my eye, for it to then have sexy vampire Jade, who I think is going to be Jackie's cosplay idea for MagFest. So heads up, everybody.
Yeah, I thought weirder than sexy vampire Jade is just the unusual abundance of dancer girls and bunny girls in every single town in the game.
Yeah, they're kind of flocking everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a little weird. It's like, Toriyama really likes bunny girls, and they're just letting him go completely hog wild this time.
Well, you know what they say, when the world's being destroyed, there's bunny girls, so,
Well, and I think it's also, it goes to the greater point that we've talked about on Random back in the day. I think it's fine for a video game to have sexiness. I want it to be paid forth in equal measure. Like, we got a lot of Geralt's ass in The Witcher 3. And
are you saying Sylvando is not sexy?
I'm saying that I think Hendrick's a little sexy. I think Hendrick's a little sexy.
Hendrick's a tall drink of water, that's true.
He really is.
But he's not the one with the abundance of charm.
No, he does not show up wearing a full-grown peacock outfit and has the main hero waving his heart. It's time to talk about Sylvando. The thing the thing that makes Sylvando so amazing to me is that they don't play him for a cheap laugh. Mm-hmm. He is just fabulous. He's just happy. And you don't have his dad hating him because he's gay or hating him because he's flamboyant. His dad wants him to be a knight. And then when he comes back and he says, I want to bring the world smiles, his dad's like, you know what, son? You go bring the world some damn smiles. Let's do this. Like, they don't do the Persona 4, like, oh my God, he might be gay. He's looking at me. Like, they don't.
No, they all immediately accept him.
Yes.
Right.
There's no compromises either. Like, he is a knight who like you said, he's a knight who makes people smile. But also, like, even when he's doing his knightly duties, he's always like, come on, darling, let's do this. And it's like, yeah, he just does no nonsense. He just takes everything. Sylvando is Sylvando, and he's not treated any other way, and he's not singled out for anything, which is...
He has real ability and prowess. He's a good fighter. He's a contributor to the team. And
he's super useful.
Yeah, he's good in combat, both mechanically and sort of in the story. Like, he's a mastered knife thrower and swordsman by all accounts in the context of the story. And Alana made an excellent point with the no nonsense part. Like, when you meet him in part 2, like, he's leading a parade of dancing men determined to bring the world smiles, but you also meet a man who's lost his way and is trying to find his son. So Sylvando's reaction is, okay, darling, we have a lot to talk about, but let's go back and help this man first, okay? So it's like he's Yeah, he's devoted to good and devoted to chivalry, but is not compromising himself one bit, and everyone else in the game is accepting of him. Like even in the party in Heliodor later, like people are meeting Sylvando for the first time, and they're like, "What a delightful man this is! Is he a friend of yours, Luminary?" Yeah, Sylvando is just he's campy and silly, but also likable.
He's also badass.
Yeah, likable and strong and badass, and I don't think it's malicious or opportunistic at all. Sylvando's just awesome.
Yeah, they don't have like him walking in on the hero while he's changing, being like, "Ooh, darling." Like they don't have any of those awkward, making fun of the sexuality of the character.
I think he might have a minor crush on Eric because he's very distressed when Eric loses his memory at one point. He goes, "Come on, we need to save our cute Eric."
I wanted Sylvando and Hendrik to get together because Hendrik, I think, sometimes is just annoyed with Sylvando because he's like, you come from this, and he's not annoyed at him because of the campiness. He's annoyed at him because he knows the backstory of Sylvando. He knows that he's this legendary knight's son. Yeah,
Sylvando's real name is Norberto, and he trained with Hendrik when they were both younger. And when Hendrik realizes Sylvando is Norberto, the look of shock and surprise on his face is amazing. Oh my god. Extreme anime overreaction. That was just very funny coming off the stone-faced Hendrik.
I think we need a spin-off game with Sylvando, Yangus, and Torneko. And
they did?
A rhythm game.
You know who they did?
Yes.
Well, Dragon Quest does have a history of having spin-off games with younger versions of the characters. Because a Dragon Quest Monsters series had Terry from Dragon Quest VI and Kiefer from Dragon Quest VII as younger versions of themselves. But they've already announced that it's going to be about Eric and his sister. Kids.
Yeah, which I'm excited about.
Which is a good choice, but still, I would have been more excited about young Hendrik and young Sylvando on an adventure.
So, Sylvando, even when he wasn't the most powerful character, because your party really goes through a lot of different stages of power. We talked about how Serena turns into Super Serena at one point. Even though Sylvando might not have been the best person for my party, I always kept him in because he just felt like the heart of the party.
Absolutely. I was going to say, even when Hustle Dance becomes less useful as you go, I can't take Sylvando out of the party.
Nope.
He's such a good support character. You can spec him for offense or defense or boosting, and he has some healing. Eventually, when he gets some good offensive charm attacks, those are really, really strong because there's outside of Veronica, maybe there aren't a lot of really good all-hitting attacks outside of Veronica and Rab, I should say. But Sylvando has a couple really good ones. He's a good fourth glue guy kind of character.
Yeah, I love that it was actually useful to keep his costume from the beginning of Part 2 because it made his charm stats so high, so you got to have him in that costume the whole time, which was amazing.
And he saved my ass quite a bit. I didn't even realize that you could swap out party members. The game in the third act gets very difficult depending on where you go and how you choose to explore. And I didn't realize that you could swap out characters. And there were a couple moments where Sylvando had to come in and save the day because my magic users were getting demolished in one hit. And he showed up and he was like, "Oh, darlings, I got this worked out." Oomph to the hero and okay, here we go.
There really isn't a weak link in the entire party. Everyone has a niche or something they're really excellent at. And even when Rab sort of starts to fall behind Serena and Veronica as a magic user, he has quests in the latter part of the game that will boost his magic stats by 50 and 100 each. So it's I don't think if you're playing on the normal difficulty with no draconian stuff on, you can use almost whoever you want to use.
I used Hendrik. He became one of my party mainstays. If I played the game again, I would bring in Jade because I do think that you kind of choose between either Jade or Hendrik just because they're very heavy melee focused characters, and I know you can spec them in a little bit different ways. When I play the game again at some point, either on Switch or just down the line, because I'm an idiot and I'm going to do that, I'm going to play more with Jade because I didn't really focus on her too much. I really liked my party, and then when I started using her after leveling, doing some power leveling, I was like, "Ooh, she's got some nice abilities."
Yeah,
and she's good at taking out metal slimes.
Yeah, she's way more offensive than Hendrik. She has critical attacks and multi-hit attacks and all-hit attacks. And her HP is quite high, but her defense is low. So if I liked my favorite party for most of the game was Hero, Jade, Sylvando, and Veronica, just because they could wipe the entire enemy team sometimes. But if I needed to steal, I would throw in Eric. If Jade was or Veronica was dying too quickly, I would switch them out for Hendrik, who's almost unkillable when he has good armor. And if I needed more healing, I would switch out probably Sylvando or Jade for Veronica. Like having those options available is great, and no one feels like a weak link, which is, awesome, because my favorite character in Persona 4 is Kanji, and sometimes Kanji is like the worst character in the game. So it felt like a bummer that I couldn't use my favorite character as much as I wanted. But
yeah, I mean, even Eric becomes like a powerhouse at the end of the game.
Yeah,
It's crazy. Yeah.
When you combine his best attacks with Divide, he can do maybe more single target damage than anybody, which is
yeah, like 3,000.
Yep.
Watching the videos of killing the Act 3 boss in like 4 turns was like, holy god.
It's amazing.
But I love the fact that the game lets you do that. You feel clever in this game. Like there was an early boss that almost killed me, which kind of took me by surprise, and you start remembering that in Dragon Quest games you should be using buffs and debuffs. Like they make the difference in a fight, and you can win fights by brute strength, but if you think it through, they are little puzzles, and you can knock them out real easy.
That was especially true in the post game. I mean, especially with the turn limits. I mean, that's what I loved about the post game of this was that it didn't matter that I was level 99. I had to make sure that I thought really carefully about how I was using my buffs, debuffs, skills, all that stuff to get through it in the number of turns, even at 99.
Yeah, the Justin's Labyrinth and the Wheel of Harma tasks are basically specialized battles with turn limits in order to gain the best rewards. And I did complete all of those, and the rewards are quite good. I mean, you get recipes for some of the best weapons in Justin's Labyrinth, and you get I think the best broadsword and some of the best equipment from the Wheel of Harma. But
that's right.
With those is like I had to figure out what combination of characters to use. I had to bring Veronica and Serena pepped up so they could use their ultimate attack right at the beginning. That helped a lot for the final Wheel of Harma thing. For a lot of the story stuff, you can brute force it, and if you just want to overlevel everyone, that's possible. But by the end game, you do have to sort of explore the depths of your skill tree and available attacks, and tricks like like remembering to use your boosting spells and your anti-breath attacks, and your and a couple characters have like Iron Eyes and counter, and so like the defense and support is every bit as important as offense when you're doing the most challenging fights in the game.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely there's definitely it's one of those games where there's a huge sense of accomplishment when you go into a hard boss fight with a game plan and you manage to actually set up all your buffs and your debuffs and time everything and not get thrown out of whack by, boss debuffs, and actually execute your plan and just put out just insane damage. It's just a sense of accomplishment that you managed to, figure all this out and then deploy it and employ it. And you feel like a badass basically. Right. So, the game's it's flexible enough to allow you to do that, especially in Act 3, with all those bosses and all those, afflictions just kind of driving you crazy. It really helps a lot.
Status effects are powerful in this game too, in a way that's really fun, especially if you're using Sylvando and Eric's like victimize attacks for sextuple damage. It's like paralysis and poison and sleep are super dope in this game. Okay.
Also, being able to easily see what debuffs are working and what's not. That's always been a problem with Dragon Quest games, especially the handheld ones. It's like, wait, did I buff myself once or twice? Because they always let you buff twice, right? Like if you use Accelerate, you can get it once, or you can get it twice.
Buff for the speed and defense stuff, yes, but for oomph, it's only once, I think.
Right. But now what they have is they have 2 stages of oomph now. Like you can do oomph and oomph full. Yeah. And so being able to see that relatively easily, I think maybe the icons could be a little bit bigger, but that's a minor complaint.
In the old Dragon Warrior games, oomph was called by kill. Which I think they wanted to communicate doubling attack power, but I remember thinking that was so strange. I didn't realize what By-Kill did the first time I played Dragon Warrior 4, I think. But a lot of the Dragon Quest skills in Japanese are puns. Like the frizz attacks are called mera in Japanese because mera is the Japanese onomatopoeia for a flame crackling. But so they mostly the localizers in this game do a lot of work with the huge number of puns and accents and language like affects that they deal with. They were putting in some hours into this localization, and it's very appreciated.
Yeah, it also feels balanced for magic attacks, whereas a lot of other Dragon Quest games, you kind of save your magic because they just cost so much MP. Now you get a lot of MP recharging skills, and so your magic users are able to actually unleash magic. How awesome is that?
And if there's a long dungeon, you can platoon your team a little bit and switch out 3 people at once so that their MP can get a rest until they get a level up, like you're a hockey coach or something. Switching your front line in and out.
Get the third line out there. All right, come on. Give it to Crosby. Everything will be fine. It's almost like there was a massive thing that happened at the end of Act 1, and the whole thing just kind of went topsy-turvy.
Right, holy crap. Yeah. There is
How's that for a segue?
I remember I was joking with some jerk on Twitter that Dragon Quest XI has a Final Fantasy VI moment, then a Final Fantasy IX moment, then a Final Fantasy IV moment, because the world goes through an apocalypse that changes the entire world state, and then a character dramatically shears off her hair in a moment of hardening her personality, and then you summon a giant magic whale to fly you all around the world. So
that's accurate. And what's weird is that the reveal for the end of Act 1, everything goes to hell. Mortigan kind of wins, and the world is plunged into darkness, which is a real downer. The reveal for that is actually in the box cover for the American version of the game.
Yeah, because you see the tree
is split.
Yeah.
And when this game decided to do World of Darkness, or World of Ruin from Final Fantasy VI, I was even more down because it felt so appropriate. Like the whole beginning, this game, it basically spans the history of JRPGs, where you start out as the hero and you're fighting one-on-one against enemies. Like just like Dragon Quest I, you are just a single hero. Then
Fight,
you start
run, magic.
Yeah. Then you get the party, and then you go through Act 1 is a very traditional linear JRPG. A little bit of here and there that you can explore, but very linear.
You're meeting you're meeting your companions, you're building a team, you're accomplishing a specific quest with specific goals, and then you reach the goal that you're trying to get to from the beginning, and then there's a turn.
And then Act 2 and Act 3 especially turn into much more non-linear JRPGs that kind of let you get yourself into trouble. Like you can kind of do things in, a limited order. Like you might have 3 different objectives that you can complete, and you can complete those 3 in any order that you want. And I really like that. The sense of discovery in this game and the fact that I really knew the map layout. I complained before about how I did wish that the map was a little bit more like Dragon Quest VIII and it was one giant open world. But by sectioning areas off, not unlike Final Fantasy XII actually, I came to know those areas and love them and really appreciate them when I got to revisit them again.
Yeah, those segmented sandboxes are, at least they're big and beautiful and cool. Like when you're riding your horse on these big plains and these mountain trails, it felt cool. Like I felt like I was going through a big world. It wasn't vast and contiguous like Dragon Quest VIII, or I think that's maybe the greatest strength of Breath of the Wild and something I loved about Shadow of the Colossus. It doesn't feel quite as beautifully vast as those, but scratches a very nice itch and feels like I know each region. Like I'm learning about these towns and their surrounding environs in a way that's very cool. Like it felt like a big world, but maybe didn't have a perfect vastness the way Breath of the Wild does. Rob's obvious favorite game of 2017.
Felt very Xenoblade.
Yeah, or Xenoblade. God, like Xenoblade does the segmented thing, like Dragon Quest XI, but I think the play areas in that are bigger and cooler.
Yeah.
Like that's an amazing thing about Xenoblade 1 and X. But I haven't played much of 2, so I can't speak to that. But like I mentioned that you can save and forge and even buy some items at campfires in this game. I even had favorite campfires by the end of the game. It's like, oh yeah, I want to go to the one in the Sniffelheim over by the frozen lake, because you can buy a couple useful items there, and it's a really pretty snow area.
Yeah, that's where I spent a lot of my time. Not in particular for a quest, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's so weird. I always found myself going to that one as well. It's kind of odd.
I also like the one in the coastal area near the beginning of the game because you can buy a couple useful like fruit and nut items, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I did have my. This is kind of a returning problem, so I apologize to listeners because you've heard me complain about this a million times. I do think the map navigation is a little problematic in Dragon Quest XI, like remembering which zoom spell is going to send you where, especially when you're trying to hunt down some quests. I think that stuff could have been a little bit better. It's a little menu driven. I hated I have to scroll over on the map to the left to then go to the next map region. Like that kind of, it doesn't come up often, but that kind of stuff, it drove me nuts. And I love this game. I complained about it in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I am going to complain about it now. It was a little aggravating, but it didn't come up that much.
Well, one related thing to that bothered me a lot. This game did something that I also hated about East 7, which is a game I love dearly, one of my favorite PSP games, is that they give you a lot of good free fast travel options in the first quarter or first third of the game in this case, and then after a certain plot point they take it all away and you have to re-find all of the waypoints.
That's true.
And all the campfires. So I had to do some backtracking early in Act 2 to go back to some campfires just so I could fast travel to them again.
I wish you could have just, when you opened up a new area, would have been better.
But nope, yep. you have to either enter the town or enter the campfire screen in order to add those back to your zoom menu, which is annoying. Maybe a little bit less annoying in this game than in East 7, because in East 7 they put up a bunch of barriers and traveling is more annoying in that game, even though it's a smaller game space. But in Act 3 they sort of undo all of that in a way that we'll get to very, very soon. But I want to go back to the turn in between Act 1 and Act 2, where the apocalypse occurs, and you're saved by the Mermaid Kingdom and turned into a fish, which was something I was not expecting.
Really
when
cool.
It happened.
Really cool.
Mm-hmm. I believe Derek Heemsbergen, our comrade on RPG Fan, described that scene as "Bitch, you're a fish."
Yes, that was accurate. Mm-hmm. That was accurate.
So after you unfish and go back to the land of the Earthbound ones, basically your hometown has become a town of refugees, and you team up with Hendrik to clear out some monsters from Heliodor Castle. And the king, who had been possessed by the demon king Mordegon, apologizes to you. And Hendrik becomes your first new companion in Act 2. And from then on, you're sort of rediscovering the world that has been changed by Mordegon, and righting wrongs town to town, and bringing the band back together, meeting all of your party members one by one. We mentioned Sylvando's amazing parade scene.
Yep.
There's also Eric also has lost his memory and ends up saving his long lost sister's life upon gaining back his memory in his little segment. And we also mentioned Jade's, where she's turned into a bunny vampire girl. But the last two people you meet are Veronica and Serena. You find Serena in the ice pond area in Sniffelheim, and then you discover Veronica's corpse in their hometown.
Holy God!
Oh my God!
I legit cried. I legit cried.
And
I hate Veronica.
You're basically restoring hope. You're like, okay, I'm gonna save this town and meet my friend again and meet this friend again, and oh, there's a new side quest here. If I save this town, okay, let's do this. And you're getting more and more positive. You're getting your band back together to challenge Mordegon. But then the sweetest, maybe most positive non-Sylvando character that you have the whole game is the one that had to that sacrificed herself to save everyone at the events in the tree and at the turn between Act 1 and 2. It was a gut punch.
Yeah, and we rag on the music, on Sugiyama's music in Dragon Quest XI, but this was one of the moments where the music and the scene, it all came together, and it did deliver. Like, Jackie, my wife, was sitting right next to me watching it, and she hated Veronica as well, and we were both, tearing up. It actually, it hurt. It actually hurt, because you realized, as Sollosi just said, this character sacrificed herself to save everyone.
Yeah, you see a flashback where the tree is basically exploding. Morrigan's unleashing some real nasty magic everywhere, but she creates a barrier and then teleports everyone away. But then her magic power is spent, and she sort of I forget if she's like hurled back to Earth, or if she sort of has to give up while she gets zapped by dark magic. It's rough. It's not like it's not gory or gruesome or anything, but it's a real moment of it's a real dramatic death that's affecting. Like, and maybe we forget about this sometimes. Dragon Quest really has emotional drama in several of its games. I mean, the ultimate one maybe being in Dragon Quest V.
Yes.
Listen to that podcast if you haven't yet, listeners. But like this, I was stunned at Veronica's death, and several other parts of this game in Act 1 and 2 just I had me in disbelief. The mermaid scene in Act 1.
Yep.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the woman in the Japanese hot springs town where she reveals that her son was turned into a dragon, and then and she's been sacrificing villagers to him so he won't to keep him alive, but then she sort of accepts. She basically becomes the next sacrifice and lets her son eat her, which is dark.
Yep. It
Holy crap.
The game takes a turn, and it's also using, like, it is telling, like, a children's story. And I think that's where...
Dragon Quest games are fairy tales.
Yes, they are.
And I say that in a positive connotation.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people that, I heard some criticisms of Dragon Quest XI, and I think they're fair. But the one that I can't get over is people saying, like, oh, it's real tropey, and like, oh, the story's like for kids. And I'm like, that's actually okay. Like, do you complain when you go and see a Disney movie that it's for kids? Like, no, you don't. Like, one of the things is that
I cried at the Firefly in Love with the Star in The Princess and the Frog. That is the most beautiful thing I've ever freaking heard in my life.
I thought you were going to say the end of Coco, which is
oh no, I wept at the lullaby scene in Coco, and then the entire last 20 minutes of Coco. Oh God, I'm not ashamed. I cry at movies sometimes, including movies for children. But sometimes these simple, wholesome stories go real emotional places that would affect an adult differently than a child.
Absolutely.
Like Coco singing, Miguel singing to Coco at the end of Coco probably affects parents more than children.
Absolutely.
And seeing the scenes of like Rab mourning his daughter would affect an adult more than an adolescent, I think. Like Dragon Quest goes emotional places, even though it's in, I don't want to say in the guise of, but it's basically a wholesome fairy tale with traditional fantasy ideas around it, but it goes. There are real emotional moments in many Dragon Quest games, and 11 doesn't let up on them at all. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but Sage Serenica mourning Erdwin.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, that was hard to watch too.
Yeah.
It was really hard to watch. So now I have to ask the question, and I've been debating this ever since I finished the game, and I oscillate back and forth on it. Does the Act 3 turn negate all of that emotion in Act 2? And the reason I'm asking that is we're kind of in the middle of this with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I made the point, without going into spoilers, that all the stuff that happened in Infinity War didn't really affect me because, I know you're just going to undo all this. But at the time in Dragon Quest XI, you don't know that they are just going to Chrono Trigger the hell out of this game.
Well,
like, you don't realize that.
Okay, now that's a fair question. In general, my answer is no, but let's give some additional context first. At the end of Act 2, you defeat Mordegon, the world is saved, but the world is still broken by all of the destruction Mordegon rained on the world.
And had the game ended here, it's still a fantastic game.
Yes, but
you get credits, you get everything.
And also, one low-key sad moment is when you meet the Watchers, or the ruins of the Watchers in Act 2. There's only one child left of this former civilization, and which is a surprisingly sad little moment. But then you after the end of Act 2, you realize, some of these Watcher structures fell down to Earth, and you examine some of the ruins of them, and you realize there's a way to turn back time. And
if I could turn Sorry.
No, appropriate. But you realize there might be a way to undo what Mortigan did. So you go to some ruins, you go through some dungeon machinations, and you realize that only the Luminary can do this. But you can the Luminary can turn to a place back in time, and basically undo or redo history. And this begs the question: does this mean that the timeline of the original Act 1 and 2 cease to exist, or does it destroy the lost time? Because we should remember the Japanese subtitle of Dragon Quest XI is "In Search of Lost Time," which might be a Marcel Proust reference, but also but is highly appropriate, and it makes you like recontextualize everything that you know about the game so far. I don't think you destroy the past, because when a similar thing happens at the end of Act 3, the Luminary is still existing in his timeline.
Yeah,
so
I think we do full on Dragon Ball Z Terminator.
Yeah.
I think we're doing Dragon Ball Z timelines where my go-to is Dragon Ball Z, Terminator, and Back to the Future.
Back to the Future and Chrono Trigger are the only good time travel stories.
Well, I really like original. I really like original Terminator, but
that's fair.
I think that at the end of Dragon Quest XI, you get a little taste of Dragon Quest 1, where like they full on the Dragon Quest 1 hero pulls the very sort of light that the Luminary is using. You get an implication of the birth of Erdrick from Dragon Quest 3, and then you still have the remaining timeline that the Luminary left at the end of Act 2. I think they're doing a full on Dragon Ball Z, Legend of Zelda. There are multiple timelines. And that's even backed up by the fact that at the very end of Dragon Quest III, there are 2 books that tell the history of the Luminary.
Jumping ahead again, the very end of Dragon Quest XI has the opening scene of Dragon Quest III. So I'll run it back a little bit. When the Luminary learns about the ability to turn back time, which we are, I guess, deciding here, which creates a new timeline rather than destroying the existing past. He goes back to the moment where Mortigan corrupted the Sword of Light. But instead of letting that happen, he is aware of Jasper's attack that allows Mortigan to walk in and thwarts it. So they're able to obtain the Sword of Light and fight and defeat Jasper, who was a rather challenging boss fight in Act 2. Mm-hmm. And then when Mortigan tries to attack in Heliodor, they thwart that as well. And Mortigan sort of realizes what's going on. It's like, wait a second, you're not the same Luminary you were before, are you? But you defeat Mortigan, and then realize that the Mortigan's, I think, the Lord of Shadows, and then you learn about the Dark One, who was the monster that Mortigan and Serenica and Drustan and Erdwin fought 1,000 years ago, and he becomes sort of the final boss of Act 3. And he was sealed in a big celestial structure called Erdwin's Comet before in Act 1 and 2.
Which I must have missed that. I don't remember them mentioning Erdwin's lantern at all until it was a giant scare ball in the sky.
No, you can see it in the far distance in the sky in Act 1, and if you talk to some scholars in the Desert Kingdom, then they'll mention it to you, but it's hidden. It's not very present until Act 2.
Okay, I felt like I had really missed something, and granted, I was destroying this game, so I'm not surprised I didn't talk to somebody and I didn't notice it. But then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, that's Erdwin's lantern." I'm like, "That's a giant scare ball! It's gonna kill us all! Why didn't you guys mention this?" Like,
it was just a normal satellite, like Venus or something, until it got alarmingly large in the sky.
I was just very confused by it. So then at this point, Veronica's back because she didn't die. And so on the one hand, I understand people's complaints that what they did was they just brought Eris back. Like, spoilers, sorry. Like, we brought Eris back.
It's been 21 years. I think it's fine.
I hope so. But at the same time, you didn't know that was going to happen. there wasn't this, there wasn't another Spider-Man movie coming out. You know what I mean? Like, so the fact that she was back, I felt the joy that the heroes felt. Like, oh my God, we pulled it off! Like,
but also,
that was kind of neat.
Also, I think they do add weight to that decision, because when the Luminary is about to turn back time, the whole team is like, "Wait a second, think this through. We don't know what exactly this is going to do."
Right, and right, and all of the experiences that you had, like, so in Act 3, you kind of do abbreviated Act 2 again, where you can go to every village and solve every village's Act 2 problem, down to what you mentioned before, the Dragon Mother.
Mm-hmm.
You can save Eric's sister again. Like, you're kind of fixing everything again, but it always plays out a little different.
Because you have the advanced knowledge, and because Mordegon didn't wreck the world with his with the destruction of the tree, and also all of the Watcher floating islands that had fallen to the ground in Act 2 are up there and are able to be explored. Act 3 is a reinterpretation of Act 2 that allows you to right the wrongs and undo the despairs of Act 2 in a way that I don't. It didn't feel cheap to me. It felt like I was righting wrongs and fixing things rather than like erasing tragedy or character development. It was a little weird having Hendrik rejoin me, because like
that's the one part that feels weird.
Yeah, Hendrik's recruitment arc in Act 2 was him realizing he was wrong, feeling awful about it, and then when he realizes that he and the Luminary can be rays of hope, him pledging his loyalty to the Luminary. And it happens again in Act 3, but with a lot less meaningful context.
Ah, yes, I wanted to kill you, Darkspawn. Now I guess I won't.
Yeah.
Like that.
Pretty much.
God, they said the word Darkspawn so many times in this game.
Know,
I thought I was playing Dragon Age Origins, exactly.
Because it's complete with the British cast. No, I tend to agree with you. There have been times where I thought maybe it was a little cheap, but I think because you don't realize that the game is going to do the time travel thing, all of that emotional resonance still works. So the first time Veronica shows back up, you can almost feel like the main character. You feel the main character's joy. She's back. And they don't have like this big long, oh yeah, I watched you die, and now you're here. It's like, no, we're just going to continue the
If
story.
anything, the Luminary's silence makes adds to the emotion of it, because the Luminary quietly like being so glad to see Veronica again. The player is feeling it, but the rest of the cast other than the Luminary isn't, which makes it, I don't know, a little powerful. I liked the feeling that it gave me.
You had it a little bit without being too explicit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
they
were saying things like, "This feels familiar," or "What's that stupid look on your face?"
Okay, it's all guys. It's just morphogenetic fields, just like 999 and 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors.
And they also, it was also fun being kind of stupid, overpowered at that point. Like when you're fighting Mordegon and you just beat his ass with the dark sword. That was really cool. Your characters level, and then they level your characters up, which was appropriate. I was like, oh god, am I gonna have to go grind?
They level, yeah. It's like, why, man, my Luminary is level 56 and everyone's level 39. This is a problem. But then they give everyone else an EXP boost, and Veronica can learn Enchanting Echo, and it's like, okay, now it's game over.
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't you rather have Super Serena back?
Yeah, part of me says yes, but part of me likes the expanded trees that Serena and Veronica get individually, because when Super Serena gets all of Veronica's spells in Act 2, it's just like their spells up to level 50 or however long. But when they get their expanded skill trees in Act 3, it's like Serena learns more healing magic that Super Serena never got, and Veronica gets more offensive magic that Super Serena never got. They stayed specialized but got more powerful, which was a Rosa Rydia Final Fantasy IV moment that I liked a lot. It's like neither of them are Tella. They're their own deal, and they're awesome.
So is Dragon Quest XI the first Dragon Quest? I think it clearly is.
Yeah.
It created the timeline that started Dragon Quest III, and Dragon Quest III is a prequel to Dragon Quest 1 or 2. So I think, and we know Dragon Quest VIII takes place after Dragon Quest III because Ramia travels between worlds, going from 3 to 8. So unless this is a separate timeline from 4, 5, 6, 7, but with everything we know about Dragon Quest, this is the earliest one that we can prove. and I apologize for that very convoluted Dragon Quest lore exploration. Lore exploration?
You're probably right.
But,
It's cute to think about.
But going back to the end of Dragon Quest 11, I'm trying to get my numbers straight here. When you defeat the Dark One, the Luminary gives his Luminary powers to Serenica, who was trapped in the Tower of Time for a long time, and she uses the Luminary powers to go back in time to when
And save Erdwin.
To save Erdwin from Mordegon, and that creates a new timeline where she and Erdwin can live together, and that is the timeline of Dragon Quest 3.
I would tend to agree, yes.
Which is crazy.
And I think, like, I was one of those people that when I was playing Twilight Princess, when I was playing Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, I wanted that game to end and it to start raining, to, like, imply that this was going to be the Wind Waker timeline or something like that. And I know how cheesy that sounds, but, like, I keep waiting for the Zelda games to be a little bit more overt with the timeline because it's fun. It really is fun, and it's one of those things that I think brings the community some joy. Dragon Quest XI makes good on that idea because I'll tell you what, I teared up like an ass when the Dragon Quest I hero just pulls the Sword of Light out right before the end credits, and I was like,
the end credits going through Dragon Quest 1 through 10 were so beautiful.
It was crazy.
God, yes.
Even as someone who's never I've never played a Dragon Quest game from before 8, I was just like, right, I'm going to play 1, and then I'm going to play 2, and then I'm going to play 3, I'm going to play 4. It's just like, it was like a nostalgia trip I'd never had, but I wanted to be in on it. Like, I wanted in on it. It was such a good... Oh, it's such a good title.
Also in the Japanese version of Dragon Quest XI, when you get the trophy for beating the game, you get a free download of Dragon Quest 1.
Yeah, I can't believe we didn't get that.
Yeah, we did not get that, which is too bad. But imagine seeing that and then saying Dragon Quest 1 has been added to your download list, right? Like after the credits were rolling. That would have been a moment.
Yeah, and it's a brand new start for Dragon Quest. I think that if Alana, somebody who hasn't even played the other games, if she had an emotional connection to this, that shows that what they did, they knocked it out of the park. Like, they stepped up to the plate. They said, we're going to have some fun with the Dragon Quest timelines. We're going to give you guys, like, just that little tidbit that this is all connected. And it works. And it works without pandering. And I think that that's the part that I really, really like. It created emotional resonance. It made you want to play all the games again. It just, the ending, I haven't played the game since I finished it because it felt like such a great ending. I just had a giant smile on my face.
Yeah, I would have been really disappointed had Dragon Quest XI ended at the end of Act 2 because I really didn't like how it ended. Yeah, I thought that it was
a downer.
Yeah, exactly, because it's just like, oh, Veronica's not here. Maybe
the end, or is it kind of moment afterwards?
Yeah.
Act 3 felt so joyful compared to the like the sort of the return from darkness of Act 2.
Act 3 doesn't feel like the post game; it feels essential, and that's what makes it so special. It doesn't it celebrates everything about Dragon Quest, especially the ending, but it doesn't shove it down your throat in a way that's like, this series is so great. It's like, yeah, it is great, and you feel it, but it's not like it's shouting it at you. You get the sense of history of Dragon Quest.
And season 3. It's the third season of an anime. You have the first season of Act 1, second season, then the third season.
The second season's the Dark Middle chapter. And
but it doesn't go all Attack on Titan and completely lose itself, and you're like, what am I watching anymore? Like,
and it doesn't go Mass Effect 3 and give you some satisfying conclusions and some unsatisfying conclusions.
Oh god. No, it is a 3-act game where everything felt so connected and so powerful. I think I would have been okay with the end of Act 2. I actually haven't played a lot of the post-game in Dragon Quest. Sollosi's still yelling at me to marry Jessica in Dragon Quest 8 for real this time.
I loved the Jessica ending in the 3DS version of Dragon Quest 8.
But then the princess is just left,
but the princess is weirdly accepting of it. like she almost gives you permission, which was strange, but I was okay with
Notebook moment right there. Like James Marsden's just like, no, go with Ryan Gosling. Like that.
Actually, yes.
I'm sorry, he's the nicest guy in the history of the universe. You come to me and say, I'm going to marry my high school sweetheart instead of you, I'm going to be pretty devastated. And James Marsden's like, no, it's going to be fine. I'm going to go be Cyclops. Like, that's what he does. Like, I'm going to go live in Westworld for a while.
But okay, that's a different Dragon Quest game. If Dragon Quest XI is referential and nostalgic without feeling exploitative for Dragon Quest III specifically, I kind of would love if Dragon Quest XII was like that for the Zenithia games.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because Dragon Quest 4, 5, and 6 are unrelated and seem to take place in different worlds, but all three of them have a floating castle populated by dragons and angels called Zenithia. And
armor.
Yes, and some very nice armor and weapons attached to Zenithia. But if Dragon Quest 12 brought Zenithia into the Dragon Quest timeline in a way that made sense, in a way that they did for Dragon Quest 3. I mean, in the way that 11 did for 3, I would love that. But that's into the realm of theory crafting and fan fiction.
Yeah. I think I was reading when we're talking about alternate timelines, right? I think one of the prevailing theories I was reading was that the end of Act 1, that timeline where the hero no longer exists, people were speculating that leads to the Zenithia set of games, because they were saying something crazy about like when the Sword of Light broke, it looked like the sword of the Zenithia, or something crazy like that. But people are already speculating that the end of Dragon Quest 3 at least led to two different sets of games, the first three and then the second three. So I don't know how believable that is.
Could be. There's I'm sure the forum chatter on Dragon Quest timelines completely exploded after Dragon Quest XI had enough time in the wild for people to play it.
Which wasn't even a thing. There's never been a thing of connecting these games. Like, Dragon Quest XI just shows up and it's like they're connected.
Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 are clearly connected, and fans have theories about 4, 5, and 6 because they all have Zenithia in them, but nothing to the level of what we're doing right now.
and then there's Dragon Quest VII, which all the timelines look at and go, yeah, it's too long.
So Dragon Quest XI. It's my personal game of the year. I laughed. Yep. I cried. No, not my personal game of the year. I'm not saying what I don't know what happened.
No, it's game of the year. I just voted 10 times. It's game of the year. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm not sure who finished second because we haven't published game of the year stuff yet. But I mean, Dragon Quest XI just got a boost. We'll see how that is affected. But before we sign off, could each of you tell me just one thing, whether you liked it or disliked it, that just jumped out at you at this game that either surprised you or became a favorite thing, whether it was a moment or a character or a system or anything.
Oh, God.
That's just one takeaway you have about this game. This is unfair. I have sprung this question on you unexpectedly. I'll go first. One character we haven't discussed, whom I sort of love, is your grandfather. Basically, you're found by an old man floating down the river and are raised in this small village of cobblestone. And your grandfather is by all accounts a very sweet old man. And there's a moment where you briefly travel back in time to speak to him as an adult, and he immediately realizes you're his young grandson, but grown up. So and in a side quest later in the game, you even meet one of his old friends who was reminiscing about their journeys as young men. This completely unimportant side character just keeps getting reference and keeps getting play later in the story in a way that I found sort of beautiful. And he could have been a total forgettable old man character, but now I have a very positive idea of him because this game respects its characters so much. Except when Jade turns into a sexy vampire bunny.
Without him, the Luminary would maybe not even exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
He's a very good grandpa. Both him and Rab would have gotten along great, I think.
Mm-hmm.
If they had ever hung out for drinks. So does either of you, anyone else have a Dragon Quest XI thing that we want to bring up before we close the door on this podcast?
We'll skip the easy ones that we talked about already. But going into the dungeons of Dungersville in Act 2 and then again in Act 3.
Oh yeah, and
that was my moment.
Yeah,
and the ghost of Irwin.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Good.
That's really good.
Amazing. Yeah.
I'm a romantic, and I am going to go with Serenica going back in time to get her Erdwin. That was that was like that was just so cool because I love the whole backstory of the 4 original heroes when you find out. Oh God, what was Mordegon's original name?
Morkant.
Yeah.
Morkant.
Yes.
And he gets corrupted by the evil power, and he kills Erdwin. which was kind of like I remember like the whole time going, man, Morrigan doesn't really have a whole lot of backstory, and then here it showed up, and it was like, whoa.
So in this version of the game, the original Dragon Quest III party was hero, mage, warrior, sage, which is a pretty good party.
Yep, and mage killed warrior, which was very depressing for everybody. But then just Serenica being able to go back and save Erdwin was really, really special, and that's when you start getting the connections to Dragon Quest III. That was the moment that I was grinning like an idiot, little teary eyed and grinning like an idiot.
Yeah, I was gonna pick Irwin's the Irwin's ghost part, but I'm just gonna be cheap and just talk about the end credits because I think that the thing that is amazing about this game is that like it acknowledges so many of the things about the earlier Dragon Quest games while also sort of removing all the barriers. I think in particular for us, like not knowing where to go and things like that. Personally, during the end credits, I was sort of thinking about, all the different things that this game did to sort of make it more accessible, sort of as a JRPG, while also managing to maintain what made it Dragon Quest. And as a person who's been playing the game for like 30 years and just seeing that acknowledgement of like my childhood, all those things, really made me emotional and definitely teared up.
Yeah, geez, like Dragon Quest XI is so modern, but does not compromise a single thing about what makes it Dragon Quest. Just like Sylvando does not compromise a single thing about himself.
Damn straight.
Yeah, I definitely to kind of follow up on that. It made me, as somebody who hadn't been playing Dragon Quest series for 30 years, only getting into it in the last 2 or 3, 4 years. I felt that as well. I was like, it must have been amazing to view these end credits and see this and what kind of impact that would have on somebody who had been playing it for 30 years.
Sure.
So, Alana, do you have a final thought of sorts on Dragon Quest XI?
Everyone's taken all 3 of mine, but
no.
I will go entirely superficial and say how well do Toriyama's enemy designs translate to the PS4 and the Vita.
The animations are so cool.
I take so many of them away. Like, I was really gutted when I found out the Haxorus wasn't in it anymore. But good God, the Kleptosaurus, the Professorus, everything else made it so good. And you can run bears over. There you go. That is my Dragon Quest XI takeaway. You can run over bears on the horse.
He gets a lot of Toriyama gets a lot of crap for basically only designing Goku and Vegeta anymore. But like his monster design is so damn charming.
This game is full to the brim with charm in those enemies, and his female character designs are so good as well. Like I haven't, he like you said, he does get a lot of crap for his kind of spiky-haired anime hero.
When you think about it, like Serena, Veronica, and Jade are 3 different, very, very different personalities and silhouettes and body types, and they're all very likable. People will make fun of Toriyama for his men looking too angular and his women either being too weirdly proportioned or the eyes or the heads too round or something, but there's a lot of color and expressiveness in his character designs and monster designs, maybe especially for monsters.
Yep. And the Dragon Quest art book just came out. And Sollosi, I know you got your copy, and I got my copy.
Yep, the I believe it's called like 30th anniversary character art or something. It's a bunch of key art from every Dragon Quest game, including the remakes. So like it'll go through character art and monster art and cover art for every game and every release of every game. And it's great. I
need that.
It's real fun to page through.
They show you like the subtle differences between like Ragnar's design from the original Dragon Quest IV to the remake was really cool.
It's sort of funny. His Japanese name is Ryan, and he was renamed Ragnar in the NES Dragon Warrior 4. But then when they brought him back in Dragon Quest VIII and the 4 remake, they officially called him in English Ragnar McRyan. So they sort of combined both names, and they did exactly the same thing for Tornico, who was Talon, and then they made him Tornico Talon in Dragon Quest VIII. So they're the localizers for the whole series have done a very good, very respectful referential job. That is I was blown away that all the mermaids talk in rhyming couplets, and all the people what was this hot spring town?
Hoto?
Yeah, and everyone in Hoto speaks in haiku, but the little kids in Hoto haven't figured out haiku yet, so they sometimes drop in and out of haiku.
I love that. Yeah, it's like the pun game in Dragon Quest XI
incredible.
Is fantastic.
Sham hat witches.
Shamhat,
Yes.
which is, what is it? Stock Ravens. I love Stock Ravens. Phenomenon. Dora in Grey.
Yeah, oh my
I'm
god,
just-
Dora in Grey is one of the best.
Dora and Gray was really good. Yeah.
Excellent.
One of the hardest
excellent,
boss
and-
fights.
Yeah, it was a really challenging boss. That was the first time I died in the game because Dora in Grey enthralled two of my characters,
Yep.
and my party killed itself. So that
Aw.
was unpleasant at the time, but
Aw.
but I bounced back. I didn't lose a huge amount of time. There was a save point right before her, but yeah, God, the pun game is so strong.
Yeah, speaking of the Toriyama pointy hair hero, how about all the little self-deprecating humor kind of sprinkled throughout when like NPCs comment about the hero's hair all the time? Like, you have the weird haircut.
It's like, why is your hair silky instead of pointy? Erdwin's hair is pointy as hell. He looks like he looks like a fourth version of Gohan for Dragon Ball Fighter Z.
That is definitely a 1990s, design.
Okay.
Man. Bring on Dragon Quest 12 in what, 20 years?
Oh boy. I think 11 was 6 years after 10.
Yeah, and he's already Hori-san's already said like, I'm thinking about making this one very gameplay focused, which says to me character classes. Like, I'm sure that idea is in his head right now.
I'm sure he has ideas, and there's planning documents around, but it's going to be a long time before 12.
Oh yeah, it'll be a while. Now, and the last thing I'll leave everybody with is just a thought. If they said the next Final Fantasy is just be a turn-based game with a big world just like Dragon Quest 11.
Who let Peter on the podcast?
No, wouldn't we all be happy?
Yes.
I wouldn't mind.
Yes.
I'm just throwing it out there. Like, I get the Final Fantasy's got to be like the innovative series. I know that argument's been made over and over again, but part of me is like, I think they're overthinking it. I really think they're overthinking it.
Final Fantasy always wants to push envelopes, but I think that the fan response to Dragon Quest XI and Octopath Traveler was so strong that Final Fantasy doing a nostalgia exercise that isn't World of Final Fantasy it would be well received. But I'm not gonna. I have no idea what FF16 is going to look like. I mean, I think the defining Final Fantasy experience of the 2000s has been Final Fantasy 14, but which goes into nostalgic territory far more than any other game, but of the past couple decades.
Dragon Quest XI made me feel how I think Square wanted me to feel about Final Fantasy 15. If that makes sense. 15 just didn't hit the mark. It didn't get to me like Dragon Quest XI did, seemingly almost effortlessly, So yeah, I would absolutely love if the next Final Fantasy kind of went back to the old drawing board there, stop trying to reinvent things, make them extreme or whatever. But that's personal opinion, I guess.
I'm just being an ass asking that question.
It's all right.
Okay.
Well, if we're talking about Final Fantasy 16, then it's definitely the end of the podcast. So let's go into housekeeping. Next week, we have our first Kingdom Hearts episode. We are going to do 2 Kingdom Hearts episodes in January. I know that Peter is very excited to talk about that. I'm perhaps less excited. But and also in January we are going to do an episode not about RPGs that we have not recorded yet, but I'm very excited to do so. And I think we're going to try and wedge in a Virtue's Last Reward episode, because after completing 999 last month, the panelists for that episode, including me, were very eager to move into the sequel. So look forward to that at the end of January. And next month, Alana, you and I are going to be talking some Tales.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm so ready to talk Vesperia.
2 episodes about Tales of Vesperia, 1 generalized Tales episode, and our sequel to the Battle Systems episode from December. That is going to be the month of February for Retro Encounter, but we are not prepared to go beyond February as to what is going to be on the podcast. But how can you reach us, listeners? Please email us at retro@rpgfan.com with any questions or comments. That's the most direct way to reach us. You can also comment on RPG Fan boards, visit RPG Fan's Facebook page, Instagram page, Twitter, Discord, stuff on Twitch every evening. 2 other podcasts, Random Encounter, which is about current events, and Rhythm Encounter, which is about RPG Fan music. All of that can be found on the rpgfan.com main page. And please, listeners, also review us on iTunes, Google Play, however you are listening to us. We appreciate any feedback that we receive. And again, thanks for listening to us talk about Dragon Quest 11 for a full 90 plus minutes. And thank you, panelists, for joining me on this. I was really, really eager to talk Dragon Quest 11 with someone, anyone who would listen. And a podcast with 4 other Dragon Quest enthusiasts was the perfect way to do so. And then thanks, Rob, for coming out of retirement to talk Dragon Quest with me again. So, panelists, let's tell the listeners the best way to reach us via social media or what have you, starting with Rob Rogan.
You can reach me by email at robr@rpgfan.com or on the RPG fan forums with the username Beardy McBeardface.
Next, Alana.
You can find me on Twitter at Alana Hagues, or you can find me on Discord at Diving Falcons.
All right, thank you, Alana. Now, Zach, how can listeners reach you?
On Discord at Zach W, and also the forums at Zach W.
So, Rob, how can listeners reach you?
They can't. I'm invisible.
Got it. Okay. Rob has no noticeable social media presence to the general public. Sorry, listeners. He will remain Pale Robbie on the boards.
It is true. The boards that no one uses. Yes.
And as for me, listeners, you can find me on Twitter as @TheRealMonsoon or @EvokerForDogs, depending on how weird I'm being at the moment. I am on the forums as Monsoon and on Discord as Monsoon Mike. Oh boy, that was a lot of Dragon Quest talk. I'm always down to talk Dragon Quest, though. So yeah, listeners, if you want to talk Dragon Quest, just yell at me, please. But that's enough.
Be more Dragon Quest.
I'm always interested in more Dragon Quest. We're getting Dragon Quest Builders before too long. Or Builders 2 before too long, I should say.
I hope that's really good. I like the formula of Builders 1. It just needs a little bit of working, and it could be awesome.
Listeners, thank you. Good night, and good luck.